In Leviticus chapter 23, it talks about a jubilee. And the jubilee is when God breaks every curse, everything that's been lost is returned, everything that's been stolen is given back multiplied. Now, in Hebrew, whenever you study, when you read something, God always has how many parts to it? Two. It has the earthly and the heavenly, the spiritual and the physical. In 1917, after World War I, the Allied nations gave Israel the land back to the Jewish people. But they said, except for Jerusalem. Jerusalem will be no man's land. Now, I'll teach the whole thing on Friday and you can get it, but there's been prophecies that's hundreds of years old that once Israel is back in the land, that for one Jubilee, Jerusalem will be in the hands of the Gentiles. This is what Jesus is talking about when he said, when the day of Gentiles is over. He's looking at Jerusalem and he weeps for it. But he said there will come a time that the day of the Gentiles ruling Jerusalem will be over. From 1917 to 1967, Israel was in the hands of England, the world. But in 1967, at the end of May, the 6-day war began. All the Arab nations came against Israel, and God gave Israel a supernatural victory. It was impossible. It was impossible to happen. You're talking about they had 3 airplanes, not jet fighters, 3 airplanes. One of the airplanes was taken from the Germans, and everything was in German on it. They couldn't even read how to fly it. They had 3 airplanes against the entire Arab world. God gave them a victory in 1967. Now, we celebrated, and I don't give you everything all at once. We celebrated last year Jubilee because the rabbinical teaching is that when Jerusalem is in the hands of the Jews, you go from a secular calendar, a Gentile calendar, to a biblical calendar. And a biblical calendar, it goes by the moons, and you go from a 365-day year to a 360-day year, which brought about a spiritual jubilee that just ended. But everything God does is physical and spiritual. This May, we go into a physical jubilee where Jerusalem was back in the hands of the Jewish people on a physical, a Gentile calendar. Come this May, we begin a physical jubilee. In the last days, God does 2 things. He does signs, wonders, and miracles. That's why we're doing the gifts of the Spirit, the fruit of the Spirit. There's going to be gifts of healing, gifts of prophecy. A great revival is getting ready to take place. But God also, every time God does something spiritual, he also does something physical or earthly. Every time God brings a great revival, he also brings a great outpouring of the transfer of wealth. Every time. It doesn't matter how much power there is if the wealth is in the wrong hands. And so we prepared you for the spiritual. Get ready. God is going to do phenomenal spiritual things. But starting in May, we go into a earthly jubilee where God begins the end time transfer of wealth. Listen to me. This is the only time anywhere in the Bible you see a double jubilee.